Homeless man stops school fight. Then they learn. He was a Navy SEAL commander. It was a gray Thursday morning, and the schoolyard buzzed with energy as students poured out of their classrooms for the lunch break. Jefferson High stood in the middle of a rough neighborhood, graffiti on brick walls, metal detectors at every entrance, and eyes that constantly scanned for trouble. Though the administration prided itself on diversity and inclusion, the truth was far more bitter. Kids of color, especially black students like Terrell, were used to being whispered about, stared at, or outright ignored. Sometimes it wasn't whispers. It was laughter, or worse, fists. Tyrell was no troublemaker. He kept to himself, wore second-hand shoes, and dreamed of becoming an engineer like the one who built bridges in his grandpa's old stories. But none of that mattered when you stood out for the wrong reasons. That day, as Tyrell walked across the courtyard with his lunch tray, a familiar voice called out, "Hey, Tyrell, lose your job at McDonald's yet?" sneered Brandon, a senior. From the rich part of town, flanked by two other white boys in varsity jackets, Brandon had money, a car, and a deep hatred for being ignored. Tyrell kept walking. Brandon wasn't the type to accept silence. In a few quick steps, he was in Tyrell's face, knocking the tray out of his hands. Food splattered across the concrete. "Oops!" Brandon grinned. "Guess you're on a diet now." A circle started forming. Phones came out, screens glowing. Tyrell took a step back. "Don't touch me again," he said, voice low. Brandon shoved. "Him in the chest," Tyrell punched back. And just like that, the courtyard exploded. Fists flew, shouts echoed. The circle of students grew, cheers and curses mixed in the air. Then something unexpected happened. A figure came barreling from the side gate. Nobody noticed him at first. He was just the homeless guy, scruffy beard, layered in ragged coats no matter the weather. Everyone had seen him camped out near the school fence, muttering to himself or quietly watching the world pass. But now he moved with purpose, fast. Too fast for someone his age or shape. Within seconds, he was between the boys, a blur of motion. One of Brandon's friends reached toward him. He twisted the boy's arm, dropped him gently but firmly. Another lunged, only to find himself flat on the ground. Brandon tried to throw a punch. The homeless man sidestepped it, knocked the air out of him with a single strike to the chest, and caught him before he could hit the ground. It was over in 10 seconds. Silence fell. The man looked around, breathing calmly. His eyes, sharp and dark, scanned the crowd. "Go back to class," he said simply. No one moved. Teachers came rushing. The security guard, always 2 steps too late, finally arrived. Whispers spread. "Who is he? Did you see that? Is that even legal?" Some laughed, others scoffed. "That's just the crazy guy," one student muttered. "Smells like piss." A girl next to him added, "Probably on something," and someone else said quietly, "Of course he's black. Bet he's been in prison." Tyrell sat on the ground, stunned but unharmed. He looked up at the man who had just saved him. The man gave a single nod, then turned and walked away, disappearing back toward the edge of the campus. No one thanked him. No one stopped him. No, one knew they had just witnessed a ghost from the past. Tyrell couldn't stop thinking about the man. All that day and well into the night, the image played over and over in his head. The blur of movement, the calm in the man's eyes, the way he dropped those bullies like it was second nature. No wasted motion, no anger, just control, precision. It wasn't luck. It was training. Real training. The next afternoon, instead of going straight home, Tyrell took a detour behind the strip mall that sat 2 blocks from school. Past the Dollar Mart and the boarded-up laundromat, there was a narrow alley, always damp, where the smell of old grease and garbage clung to the air. It was here that the man, Isaiah, he would later learn, made his home. A collection of blankets, a plastic tarp stretched over a crate, and a shopping cart filled with crushed cans and books with the covers torn off. Terrell approached quietly, carrying a brown paper bag with 2 turkey sandwiches and a bottle of water. He cleared his throat. The man was doing push-ups on bare concrete. Not slow, tired push-ups, but fast, disciplined ones, each perfectly aligned, each movement sharp. His coat was off, revealing a lean frame, scarred and weathered, but unmistakably strong. After 30 reps, the man stood, barely breathing hard. "You're the kid from the fight," he said, not turning. Terrell nodded. "Yeah, I brought something. Thought you might be hungry." Isaiah finally turned, eyeing the bag. "I don't beg, and I don't take charity." "This ain't charity," Tyrell said, holding it out. "It's thanks." There was a long pause. Isaiah stepped forward, took the bag, and sat down on an overturned milk crate. He opened it slowly, removed a sandwich, and took a small bite. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the hum of distant traffic and the occasional shout. From the nearby bus stop. "You used to be a soldier, didn't you?" Terrell asked. Isaiah didn't answer. "I saw how you moved. That wasn't some random street brawl stuff. You trained for that. You saved me." Isaiah looked off toward the chain-link fence, jaw tightening. Those were different days. Loud days. Wet days. Salt in the air. Sand in your teeth. And brothers you'd take a bullet for. He didn't say more. "You talk like you miss it," Tyrell said. "I don't miss the blood. I miss the men. The ones who didn't come back." Tyrell studied him. "What happened to you?" Another silence. Isaiah stood up. "People don't want the truth, kid. They want stories with heroes and happy endings. I don't have either." That was all he said before turning away and disappearing into the alley shadows. The next morning at school, Terrell couldn't keep it to himself. In Mr. Carson's U.S. history class, he lingered after the bell. Mr. Carson was different. He was one of the few black teachers at Jefferson High. His wall was covered in civil rights posters and old war photographs. He didn't shy away from hard topics, and he listened. "I think that homeless guy's more than what people think," Tyrell said. "The one from yesterday?" Mr. Carson raised an eyebrow. "You talked to him?" Tyrell nodded. "He said something about brothers he'd take bullets for. And the way he moved. It was like watching a soldier." Mr. Carson leaned against the desk, folding his arms. "Isaiah, right? I've seen him before. Keeps to himself. Most folks ignore him." "But what if he's not just some random guy?" Tyrell asked. "What if he's military, like trained?" Mr. Carson's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "It wouldn't be the first time a veteran slipped through the cracks. This country doesn't always remember the ones it sends off to war, especially when they're black and come home with scars no one can see." Terrell swallowed. "I want to know more." Mr. Carson nodded slowly. "Then we'll start digging, quietly and carefully. Because somewhere in the past of that quiet man living behind the market, buried under silence and time, was a story that had been forgotten, maybe on purpose. But Tyrell was determined to find it, and Isaiah, whether he wanted it or not, was no longer invisible. The deeper they looked, the harder it was to stop. Tyrell and Mr. Carson met after school in the dim corners of the old city library. Its stained carpet, flickering lights, and endless shelves offered a strange kind of sanctuary. There, surrounded by dust and silence, they began piecing together a mystery no one had cared to solve. First it was old news clippings, yellowed and half-scanned. Then came archived military journals, redacted reports, and grainy photos in forgotten corners of the internet. Each piece was a whisper of something larger, something buried. And then they found it. An article from the Herald Times, dated nearly a decade ago. The headline read, "Tragedy in Kandahar. Decorated Navy SEAL commander missing after explosion." Below it, a photo. Sun-soaked, grainy, but unmistakable. Commander Isaiah Freeman, age 38, African-American, Medal of Honor recipient, former SEAL team, 6 officer, known for surgical precision and unshakable calm in the field. The article detailed a botched extraction mission in southern Afghanistan. An IED had claimed the lives of several team members. Isaiah Freeman was declared MIA, presumed dead. Tyrell stared at the image, then looked up at Mr. Carson. "That's him," he whispered. Mr. Carson nodded slowly, eyes unreadable. 10 years, and nobody knew. They printed the article, highlighted the quotes, and brought it to the school board. But the reaction was cold. "This must be a coincidence," said Principal Merriman, adjusting her glasses without looking up. "There are many people with similar names." Tyrell pushed forward. "It's not just the name, it's him. I saw what he did. He moves like a soldier. He talks like someone who's seen too much." "We appreciate your concern," the principal said. "But it's not our place to make judgments about the lives of transient individuals." Mr. Carson narrowed his eyes. "He saved a student's life. That alone deserves more than polite dismissal." But the school board wasn't interested in ghosts from wars long past. Worse still, once the story began circulating, first among students, then picked up by a local reporter, some parents didn't like it one bit. "I don't want my son learning. To idolize a vagrant," one white father barked at a PTA meeting. "This is completely inappropriate," a mother added. "We're making a hero out of someone who lives behind a dumpster." Behind closed doors, teachers murmured support. But publicly, few dared speak. Tyrell, however, didn't back down. With Mr. Carson's help, he arranged a student-led event in the school auditorium. A night of heroes, he called it. The idea was simple. Students could bring in family members or community figures who had served, sacrificed, or inspired. Tyrell put Isaiah at the top of the list. He found him that night near the alley, firelight from a rusted barrel flickering across his weathered face. "They don't remember you," Tyrell said, handing him the invitation. "But maybe it's time they did." Isaiah didn't move. "You want me to wear a suit? Stand under lights? Tell war stories to a crowd that didn't care enough to ask where I went for 10 years? "No," Tyrell said. "I want them to hear you, to see what they looked away from." Isaiah took the invitation and stared at it. His jaw clenched. His voice, when it came, was tired. "I buried my brothers on foreign soil, watched men scream for their mothers in languages no one taught me, and when I came home, they didn't even send a cab. Just silence, paperwork, and eventually, the streets." He handed the invitation back. "Let the past stay buried, son. You don't dig up ghosts without a reason." Tyrell didn't argue. He just stood there, heart heavy, knowing the war Isaiah had fought didn't end in Afghanistan. It followed him home. The attack came just after sunset. Tyrell was alone in the parking lot, the school mostly empty. He'd stayed late rehearsing his speech for a night of heroes, even though Isaiah had refused the invitation. Something inside him still hoped. The man would change his mind. The streetlights buzzed above as he walked toward his bike, backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in. He didn't hear them at first, just a flicker of movement in his periphery. Then came the shove. Tyrell stumbled back against a car, yanking out his earbuds. 3 boys circled him, older, bigger, faces tense with something more than anger. One of them, Josh Kellerman, was a varsity football player. His father was on the school board. "You think you're special now?" Josh sneered. "Playing hero with that trash behind the market?" Tyrell tried to move past them. "I don't want trouble." "You brought it when you put his face all over the news." The first punch came fast, a hook to the ribs. Tyrell doubled over. Another grabbed his collar. A fist was drawn back. Then everything stopped. A blur of movement, sharp, practiced, efficient. The boys were on the ground before they even realized someone had stepped in. One arm pinned, another disarmed. A switchblade before it left a pocket. Within seconds, Isaiah stood alone. breathing slow and even, his posture tight, alert, soldier-ready. Above them, the school's security camera caught everything. The video was uploaded within hours, first by a freshman with access to the footage, then reposted across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. The clip exploded online. Homeless man defends student with SEAL-like moves. Is this former Navy SEAL Isaiah Freeman? Watch this. Proof that heroes walk among us. Veterans recognized him immediately. One posted an old squad photo with a caption, "That's Commander Freeman. He saved my life in Fallujah." By the end of the week, the Department of Defense issued a statement. After reviewing the footage, they confirmed the identity. Isaiah Freeman, former SEAL team commander, presumed KIA in 2015, now officially located. The story was picked up by national outlets. CNN ran a feature. Military Times published an editorial titled, "We failed one of our best." The Pentagon acknowledged that Freeman had suffered severe PTSD after the loss of his unit. Without a support system, he'd vanished from the VA's radar, slipping through every crack a veteran could fall into. And now, his story was too public to ignore. The school's tone shifted overnight. Principal Merriman called Tyrell into her office, not to scold, but to apologize. She asked him to help organize a formal ceremony. For once, Tyrell didn't feel small in that chair across from her desk. He felt heard. Students who had once whispered behind their hands now stopped him in the halls, asked questions, shook his hand. And Isaiah? He didn't speak to the media. He declined interview requests. But when Tyrell handed him a folded invitation, time for a school assembly in his honor, he paused. "You really think they want me in that auditorium?" Tyrell nodded. "I don't think they're ready, but I think they need to see you." Isaiah stared out at the horizon, jaw tight. Then finally he said, "Then let's give them something to remember." The auditorium was packed. Students filled every row. Teachers stood along the walls. Journalists had been politely asked to stay outside, but the school's AV club was live streaming everything. Nobody wanted to miss it. When Isaiah Freeman walked onto the stage, the room went completely silent. He wore a clean shirt, pressed slacks, and a pair of boots that had once crossed deserts halfway around the world. His beard was still unruly, but his eyes, sharp, steady, commanded the room without needing a single word. He stood behind the microphone, glanced at Tyrell in the front row, then began. "I'm not here because I want your pity." His voice was deep, quiet, and unwavering. "I'm not here to tell you I'm a hero. I've buried too many real ones to wear that title lightly." He paused. "I'm here because a young man refused to walk away from the truth, even when it made people uncomfortable." A hush swept over the students. Even the ones who had laughed at Tyrell weeks ago now sat with heads bowed. Isaiah continued, "I fought for a country that taught me how to be a weapon, but never taught me how to come home. When I wore the uniform, people saluted. When I took it off and disappeared behind a dumpster, they stopped seeing me altogether." His voice cracked slightly. "Just for a moment. I lost my brothers over there, not just in the sand and smoke, but here, in memory, in silence. Some died. Others lived, but never came back. Like me." He looked out over the crowd. Not every scar is visible, and not every warrior wears medals. Then he stepped forward, away from the mic. "I'm telling you this because I need you to understand bravery doesn't come with a badge, and dignity doesn't come with clean clothes or the right skin color." The room was still. No movement, no phones, just breath. Isaiah returned to the mic. "So if you remember anything from this day, remember this. You never know who someone used to be. You only know who they are when you choose to see them." He nodded once, then stepped back. The applause began slowly, then rose, wave after wave. Some students stood, Others wiped tears. Even the principal, always so composed, clapped with both hands and eyes glistening. In the weeks that followed, Isaiah received an official apology from the Department of Veterans Affairs. He was granted housing through a reintegration program, offered a position as a trauma counselor for veterans, and invited to speak at multiple schools across the state. But he kept his schedule light. "I'm not trying to be famous," he said. "I'm just trying to heal." Tyrell, meanwhile, became something of a local symbol. He helped form the school's first equity council. He spoke at school board meetings, worked with teachers to redesign curriculum around social awareness, and never forgot the lesson Isaiah had taught him: silence helps no one. The story of Isaiah Freeman and Tyrell Evans spread across the country. News outlets called it a story of honor reclaimed. Students across America wrote essays, made short films, hosted discussions. And somewhere behind all the noise in a quiet room with sunlight pouring in through a clean window, Isaiah sat at a desk, writing letters to the families of fallen teammates. He wrote them not for closure, but for connection, for every name forgotten, for every face overlooked, and for every young voice like Tyrell's, brave enough to say, "This man matters," because he did. And now, finally, so did the truth. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, share it, because sometimes seeing the humanity in others starts with simply hearing their truth. Until next time, stay kind, stay aware, and never judge a book by its cover.